Hey guys, welcome back once again to Three Tales Told, the podcast of amazing tales of history, adventure, action, fonts sometimes. Okay, one time I talked about a font. Not this time, okay guys, not this time.
We're exciting people around here.
I'm Jason Lavoie here. I got Shane, right?
How's it going?
It's going. And Sean Slot, how are you doing?
Hey, everybody.
Hey now.
You know,
All right. Shane, you're starting this one, I think, there, bud.
I am.
You are. You
Out
just want
for
to
a
go
rip,
for
are
it?
you, bud? Just out for a rip?
Let's go for a rip
Come on,
here,
Rep,
bud.
bud.
Let's have a dart and go for a rip. What do you got for us, Shane?
I am going to talk about the New Horizons space mission to Pluto.
Awesome. You just gonna not talk about it?
Nope, I'm going to leave you guys hanging. You can check Wikipedia.
This is the podcast. Hey guys, Google this.
Oh, I love it. All right, so I am going to tell you guys about the dwarf planet, as it's been called now, Pluto, and the New Horizons spacecraft and its mission to visit it. So I'm going to start about Pluto's discovery. It was discovered on February 18th, in 1930, by Clyde Tombaugh at the Lowell University or Observatory. Clyde was an amateur astronomer who built his own telescope on his parents' farm out of old scrap metal tubing, car parts, a mirror, and some glass. Impressed by his astronomical drawings, Clyde was invited to the Lowell Observatory in order to search for trans-Neptunian objects in the night sky, after it was suggested that there could be a ninth planet somewhere beyond the orbit of Neptune, that's what trans-Neptunian refers to, something beyond the orbit of Neptune. And upon the discovery of Pluto, a contest was held around the world who was going to come up with a name. And an 11-year-old girl named Venetia Burney suggested naming the planet after the Roman god of the underworld. So after Pluto was discovered, it actually inspired a couple of people that I'm going to mention here. One of them was science fiction and horror writer Howard Phillips Lovecraft. He used Pluto as the home world for his fictional extraterrestrial race called the Migo in his short story The Whisperer in Darkness, and it was written in between February and September of 1930. Lovecraft was also a fan of astronomy, and he kept up with current events in the scientific community. And the discovery of a ninth planet, he loved that idea, and he wanted to use it in one of his stories, and so that's how that happened. The other was probably more well known, but nobody really knows for sure. Unofficially, animators at Walt Disney Studios have linked the name Pluto the Pup, which is the dog of Mickey Mouse, to the naming and discovery of Pluto shortly after the character was created in March of 1930. So fast forward into the 2000s, plans to visit Pluto were it was talked about as far back as 1992, but funding and serious consideration to visit it hadn't really been met until November of 2001. And the New Horizons mission to Pluto, finally, in January of 2006, it happened. Now, this is kind of a big deal because no one had ever, it was kind of like a pilgrimage across our solar system. Nobody had ever proposed sending a man-made object this far into the solar system. And to give you an idea of how far New Horizons had to go, the distance between Earth and Pluto is like 4.67 billion miles. In order to get a probe out there, have it take photographs and send measurements and all kinds of information back to Earth, this thing had to be state of the art by the time it got there, which meant that the technology to create the New Horizons spacecraft had to be more advanced than what current technology would have allowed. Do you guys understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it was going to take such a long time to get there.
That's almost be self-powering too, right?
I think it ran on fuel, but it used they call it a gravity assist from the planet Jupiter. So it basically gave the probe a slingshot
Right.
towards Pluto to conserve fuel. The probe was traveling after it was launched 36,400 miles an hour, which made it the fastest man-made object to leave the Earth. And by 2038, it's expected to be the 5th man-made object to leave our solar system. Now, unfortunately, Clyde Tombaugh, he wouldn't live long enough to see the probe reach Pluto. He passed away at the age of 90 in January of 1997. However, he was cremated, and a portion of his ashes were placed aboard the New Horizons spacecraft. So, technically speaking, a piece of him has reached Pluto. The probe reached Pluto on July 14th in 2015, so that's 9.5 years this thing traveled through space to get to where it needed to go. And all of the information the probe has sent back to Earth, like in total, all of the photographs, all of the measurements, all of the atmospheric testing took 1.5 years total for all of this information to get back to Earth. And just to kind of close, a couple of interesting kind of things. Some geographic features discovered on Pluto by New Horizons. One is called the Cthulhu Macula, which is an area of the planet named after Lovecraft's most famous creation, Cthulhu. And the Tombaugh Regio, which is another service feature, which was, named in honor of Clyde Tombaugh. So it's kind of interesting that not only does a piece of him exist aboard the spacecraft, but the planet that he discovered, there's a geographic location there that's also named after him. And that's my tale.
Really cool. I find that just so fascinating, especially with space travel like that, where you're going, millions upon millions of miles, almost to pinpoint precise locations. And like you're mentioning, like that slingshotting around a planet. I mean, the calculations to do something like that is insane.
I can't imagine the math that was involved. Like, seriously, like to calculate a trajectory, like Sean said, of something that far away and to create an itinerary and to know that it's going to be exactly 9.5 years at this exact speed, at this exact distance, this planet is going to be in this location, and we're going to do A, B, and C to get it there on time.
And also, like, to avoid, I think that asteroid belt is pretty thin. Maybe you could speak to that, Shane, right? Isn't there like a big giant belt of asteroids between, I believe, Mars and Jupiter?
Yeah, there is.
So they obviously figured out how to avoid that and
either navigate through it or just go over it. I'm not sure, but
yeah, dimensions being what they are, right? What's your
There'll always be that element of risk too.
Yeah, Shane, what's your opinion of them downgrading Pluto to a dwarf planet?
I think it's actually for the best, because when I read up on the reasons as to why they did it, to me it makes sense. NASA's definition of a planet means it has to be a spheroid. It has to have cleared out the neighborhood around it, which means it can have a moon and it can have satellites in orbit around it, but it can't be in an asteroid field somewhere.
Right. I was going to say that one of the reasons why it gets downgraded is because Ceres is not a planet. But Ceres, I believe, is in that field, and it doesn't have a moon. But
Yeah,
but it is I guess, it is a celestial body that is closer to Earth than Pluto is,
it
and
is.
it was never given planet status.
No.
But Pluto
And
does have, I think, 3 moons.
it does. However, Pluto exists in something called the Kuiper Belt, which is another part of the outer solar system. So that's why it was called a dwarf planet.
Right,
It's not a part of the inner solar system like the other 8 planets are.
right. It's really far away. Like, it's far away even from Neptune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only that, but Pluto's orbit actually, at one point, it actually crosses with the orbit of Neptune. But they never, like the way they're in orbit around the sun, they never actually meet each other.
Right,
Because for a while it was a concern that, like, was Pluto at one point in time perhaps maybe like a moon of Neptune's? And so
okay.
that's kind of the theory as to why their orbits kind of cross over each other like that.
Definitely an interesting concept.
I recommend anyone who hasn't seen those photos to please do go check them out. They're incredible. I remember when they came out, and I believe it was 2015, if I'm not mistaken, right, Shane? Like when they
It
came
was.
out, I remember when it was in the news and just seeing like how incredible those photos were and how cool it looked. Did it get Charon, the moon? I think it got some cool shots of that as well.
It did, yeah.
Its largest moon. So like just so cool. Like just, and it got some good photos of other stuff too, right?
It did. It got photos of other planets along the way, like Mars, some of Saturn's rings. It got photos of some of the weather jet streams on Jupiter, some of its moons. It discovered features on Uranus that previously weren't there when I think it was one of the Voyager spacecrafts did a flyby. Yeah, just all kinds of things. And what's really neat is before these photos of Pluto were ever released, because it was so far away, even telescopes orbiting the Earth couldn't get clear pictures of it. So nobody knew what it looked like. Nobody knew what exactly its surface composition was. Nobody knew for sure if it even had an atmosphere. And for the longest time, it was believed that it only had one moon.
I think it also did it also get pictures of Neptune, like when they discovered that Neptune also had a gigantic storm, kind of like how Jupiter has a storm.
Yeah, they call it the Great Dark Spot.
Yeah. One cool fact about Neptune, I know we're talking about Pluto, but one cool fact about Neptune is just the pressure and intensity that it rains diamonds there.
Yeah, it's kind of neat.
That is crazy.
Every woman in the world is perked up, huh? Your head will crush in from the pressure, but never mind. It rains diamonds. Anyways, great stuff, Shane. Thank you so much for being the first one to talk about space. That's awesome.
Yeah, I don't know how well I explained it. It was hard to gather notes for this one because there was just so much, and I did my best to condense it and still try to make it interesting. So I apologize if it seemed like I was kind of jumping around a little bit, but I kind of had to skip a few things.
No, I thought it was a great story. Good one, Shane.
All right.
Oh, thanks, guys.
I think okay, so I guess I'm up now. Let's Let's cue the music and we'll come back and I'll tell my tale.
Excellent.
All right, guys. I'm here to talk about a American hero, a Civil War hero, a civil rights hero, and a man that not enough of us know about. His name is Robert Smalls. He was born into slavery in 1839 in Beaufort, South Carolina. His mother was a slave. She was a house slave. His father's unknown, but a lot of signs point to the fact that it would likely be his mother's owner, the slave master, Henry McKee. When Robert was younger, because he was kind of a preferred slave and he wasn't a field slave, he got to do little tasks and jobs, and he actually got moved to Charleston to do odd jobs. He started as a lamp lighter, street sweeper, that sort of thing, and he earned pittance, basically like $1 a week, and the rest of his salary went to Henry McKee. He really had a love and affinity for the ocean and the sea, and he started working as a dock worker and a longshoreman, and eventually he got onto the boats, and he eventually became a wheelman. In those days, the whites were the pilots, but black was never known as a pilot. They were known as a wheelman. As he got older, he married a woman named Hannah Jones, I believe, a fellow slave. I think she worked as like a maid or something like that in Charleston. They had a family, and he kept going along as a working in the docks and so forth, and he started piloting these ships and working on the ships. And as the Civil War started to brew, he started to become a pilot for a ship called the CSS Planter, and it was converted into basically a military transport ship. As he was on the ship, he started to observe the sea, became a master. He knew the shore like the back of his hand. He learned everything from the captains there, hand signals, various demeanors, even how the captain walked. A fellow shipmate once joked when he put his hat on, he said, "Boy, you look just like the captain." That sparked a little interest in Robert. Mischief as he is, he saw an opportunity. See, he had become such a good, loyal slave that the whites there started to trust him. So much so one fateful night in May 13th, 1862, he planned his escape. 3 white officers left the ship, and with Robert and his fellow black shipmates alone, they went to go get drunk. So that's when Robert's plan came into action. He commandeered, well, let's just say it, he stole the CSS Planter and took 9 other families with him as he left the docks of Charleston. He basically said he was going to do it alone, but his wife was insistent of coming with him. And he said, look, if we get caught, we're blowing ourselves up. They had loaded a bunch of explosives in the bottom of the ship. Basically, this was do or die. There was 4 checkpoints on their way, the last one being the famous Fort Sumter. Now, in each checkpoint, it was night. He was able to use the hand signals and the various signals on the boat's lights to get past each checkpoint. The final checkpoint, he used his life signal and he got through. He's finally on his way to freedom. But alas, he's entering Union territory. As he got there, one of the wives wisely grabbed a white sheet. They lowered that Confederate flag and they raised up the white sheet just as the guns were ready to fire. A soldier on the Union side stopped the command and said, "I think they're surrendering." As the boat came up onto dock, Robert slyly said, You guys got a Union flag for this ship? He was a hero, overnight sensation. The Union loved him. He was basically a celebrity. Of course, the South, incredibly embarrassed that a slave, a so-called lesser human, would fool these idiots and take his ship, put a $4,000 bounty on his head. Robert could have taken his prize money that he was given by the Union and enjoyed the rest of his life in freedom, but instead he felt a greater cause. He actually met with Abraham Lincoln with his heroic actions convinced Lincoln to allow black troops into the Union Army. He actually ran 17 battles in the ships. One fateful battle, the white captain, in a fit of coward and panic, decided he was going to surrender the ship. Robert wasn't having none of that. Calmly escorted the CSS Planter. Yes, that's right. The same ship he stole, he was now the captain of. His heroic actions getting that out of harm's way and taking over the white captain, who was basically a coward, earned him that title of one of the few ever black captains in the Union Army. In fact, there's a ship that was named after him. It's only one of the first, it was the first ever ship in modern Army to be named after an African American. It wasn't done for Robert. He went on to become a congressman in Reconstruction. He helped educate blacks. He himself became educated. He was illiterate, but he learned to read and write. He was a congressman. And he actually, later on, he went back to Charleston, South Carolina during Reconstruction and bought the house of his former master. I mean, that's just a fucking boss move right there.
That's a slap in the nuts.
It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. He passed away in 1915 at the age of 75 due to complications from diabetes. On his monument, it is written, "My race needs no special defense. Their history in this country proves them to be equal of any man anywhere." Robert Smalls, one of the greatest heroes that many people have never heard of.
Awesome story. I love it.
Thank you, sir.
If you want to talk about somebody who really stuck it to the man, I mean, he did kind of wait and bide his time, but when he stole that boat, I mean, really, to me, that kind of sounds like it was his wake-up call to do something, right?
Well, he was planning for a long time. I mean, like I said, he would study the hand signals. He actually tried to, I don't want to say what he did was not honorable because it's against the South and F them, really. It was like one of the greatest moves ever. But he actually tried to go about it the so-called legal way. There was ways to earn your freedom as a slave. If you saved a white man or you snitched on other slaves, basically. One way was you could buy your freedom, and he had saved money, but he just could not afford the freedom of his wife, his child, and himself, and he just couldn't afford it. So, but that was what his original plan was to just work hard and earn enough money to buy their freedom. But he just couldn't afford it, and he just saw the opportunity and went for it.
Well, it paid off. I mean, and if you really think about like somebody's mentality in that situation, in that point in time, it's not unrealistic to want to believe that there is a possibility that if you work hard enough and play by the rules, you could actually buy your freedom. But like how much would it have cost to do that? And was it actually was it actually obtainable?
In my research, Shane, it would have cost, I believe, $800 to free his family, which I believe is the equivalent to about 30 to 40 grand. He had about $100, so they said it would have taken him another 10 years to just afford that. I mean, the system's rigged against him because this is assuming that the master would want to sell it to sell the freedom of them, because you also have to, it's still a sale, right? You have to have, the other party has to agree to the sale. Also, not to mention his wife's master was apparently getting abusive, and you know, it was panic time. And, you know, sometimes these slave owners, they could sell your children, they could sell your wife. I mean, that's what happened to, you know, that was the threat that was going to happen to Harriet Tubman. And it happened to Sojourner Truth, another civil rights activist. At the time, her son was sold off into slavery at 5 years old, and she had to fight the courts just to get him back. And she actually got him back. But still, like, yeah, they could sell your children to anywhere, you know. And you're living in constant fear, you know. I mean, it's a horrible way to live, and honestly, that or death. I mean, basically the biggest risk ever, or death. I could see why they took it. They were prepared to die.
Say, like, I really don't blame him for doing what he did. Like, I
Well,
fully support his decision.
That's the real tough and sad part with slavery is, as you said, Jason, you're buying and selling them. Like, they were not viewed as human beings. They were viewed as property.
100%.
And yeah, when it came to death, you were just another number.
Yeah, they really, like, they didn't, you know, they really didn't want their slaves to die, because obviously their slaves were money for them. So to be fair, like, you know, the fact that he was able to go back though and buy the house just is, you know, and apparently the old lady was still there and barely coherent, and he even like cared for her. I mean, he was such a good man as well as a hero. Like, he wasn't mean, he wasn't, you know, ruthless. And there's actually an interesting story. He was gonna PT Barnum was gonna like bring him on to his show, because like PT Barnum liked any sort of curiosity, and he actually had an escaped slave in his circus, who actually murdered 3 people with an axe.
Oh.
And people were like, no, don't do that, man. Like, he's just going to make you look like a fool. And, you know, with better judgment, he didn't go with that. But so he was not a killer. He wasn't a bad person. He was such a good person, you know?
In some ways, it sounds a little bit like the Robin Hood, right? Not necessarily steal from the rich, give to the poor, but maybe did some underhanded things, but he had good reasonings.
Well, yeah, and if you think about it, I mean, the South is just pure evil, right? I mean, like, we can't look at them as good in any way. I mean, I can understand a little bit of people still have pride for that, but I don't get it. I never will. It's not part of my history or culture, so, you know, I can let Southern people speak to that. But I mean, could just imagine how humiliating it was. Apparently I don't know, I think those 3 guys were court-martialed because they'd rather get drunk and just leave their ship kind of to these slaves. And I really kind of find it quite interesting, just the fact that he was able to get away with that. And how this has not become a movie is probably one of the greatest tragedies in terms of storytelling history. How is this not a movie? I mean, it'd be a great movie.
Oh, no, totally agree.
I think you would have to make it. I don't know any other way to make it.
Tarantino, Jordan Peele. I want to see a Jordan Peele Tarantino collab on this. Come on, Hollywood.
Yes, that's exactly how you would do it.
We don't need another freaking.
There you go.
We don't need a Black Panther black superhero movie. We have a real life superhero in Robert Smalls. Come on, Hollywood. Get her done.
I would love to see a Tarantino twist on this movie.
Oh man, just like watching Inglourious Basterds, I can imagine like the scene where like they're getting the checkpoints, or just the scenes where like even like Django Unchained. I mean, he covered a lot of the South there, right? And how brutal the South can be.
Yeah.
I mean, it would just be kind of like revisiting that. I mean, I don't understand why he wouldn't make that a movie. I mean, Django Unchained, from what I understand, isn't based on any real character at all. So I could be wrong. If I am wrong, I will correct myself. But I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have no idea. I think Django is one of Tarantino's original characters. It's just the setting is based on historical. Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, but like the fact of the matter is, this is Robert Small's a real person, you know. Anyways, it was when he visited Lincoln. Lincoln said, "Why did you risk your life for you know, for all this? Like, why'd you do that? Like, you know?" And he said one word: freedom. I think that just says it all, doesn't it?
It pretty much sums up his entire life and the conditions that he lived in. To want to do something that desperately and to go to those lengths, and then to say that word, well, like, why did you do it? For freedom. Like, it really was that bad of a life.
It
Absolutely.
really speaks volumes. It really does.
Anyways, guys, hope you liked that. Sean, you are up now, my friend.
All right, so it's actually kind of interesting that Jason brings up slavery down in the South, because my story also takes kind of an origins back down there. But I guess kind of first of all, for those who do know myself, Jane and Jason, we used to have a little bit of a tradition when we were in Calgary of the Calgary Blues Festival.
Heck yeah.
It's a genre of music we all enjoy. So I thought I'd kind of bring us down a little bit of history of the music. Obviously, everyone knows that the blues kind of started as slavery music. I could go into details with that, but it's pretty common knowledge. It is believed that goes back to the 1890s, but again, because we're talking about slavery times, very few records were kept during that time because of the racial discrimination. The first known sheet music of blues was believed to be written by a New Orleans musician named Antonio Maggio in 1908, and the song was "I Got the Blues." But yeah, during the 18th century, though, it was actually kind of known as field holler music, so you can imagine why. And kind of into the 1900s, they started to see kind of more moving away from group performances, especially out in the fields, towards more individualized performances. Then you kind of move a little bit further ahead until after the Emancipation Act. That's when you started to see juke joints opening up. So these are kind of places that popped up where blacks could go to listen to music, dance, gamble, kind of just throw back and relax kind of after a hard day's work. And these juke joints were kind of the early legends started out, especially Robert Johnson, which could be a whole, section of the podcast in and of himself. But even kind of going back to where, very few records were kept. I mean, even a guy like Robert Johnson, there were very few recordings of him, and those were found were very rare. There's only been 3 known photographs of him. Just being black during that time, there's very little record of you. But the music itself is kind of an interesting background in itself, because of course it's mostly African American, but no one can really point to kind of one necessarily style of African music. Kind of the more popular instruments in the early days was the diddley bow, which is the homemade one-string instrument that was kind of mostly found in the South in the early 20th century. And
That sounds very familiar, Sean. That sounds very familiar.
Doesn't it, though? So, of course, into the 1920s, blues was becoming more and more of an element in, African American lifestyle, and it was becoming a little bit more popular just within music in general. And this is where it started reaching out to more of the white audiences, and it kind of kept growing in a little bit more popularity as kind of time went on. And then kind of post World War II is when you saw it start reaching the the northern states, and a lot larger centers like Chicago and Detroit. And kind of now it's kind of molded into what we see today. And yeah, that's basically my story, kind of short and sweet.
Just like a really beautiful blues song, short and sweet.
That's right.
I really love the story of, Robert Johnson and Delta blues in general. People like Tommy Johnson, Robert Johnson, and probably one of my favorite blues names ever, Lead Belly, who has a song called Hitler Blues. It's literally a song about Hitler.
If you guys want to know, well, not know, but I recently came across a musician and guitar player. His name is Avi Vinker, and he does a song called "I Killed Robert Johnson." It's kind of an interesting take on the story of Robert Johnson. I recommend it.
Yeah,
For sure.
I've heard of that song by a band called the Stone Foxes. So I wonder if that's a cover.
I think Avi was a part of the Stone Foxes at one point.
Okay.
I could be wrong about that, though.
That's a great song.
It is a good song for sure. But what a rich history the blues has. That
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's interesting Jason brings up Robert Johnson because of their color, their skin at that time, like even though like he was an amazing magician, he was not a glamorous celebrity. He was not rich at all. He died penniless. These were not rich folk at all.
Oh, definitely not. I mean, I love the story, the crossroads and meeting the devil, selling your soul. I mean, it's so legendary. I understand you can even go to the actual supposed crossroads out there in the Mississippi country. I mean, it's pretty cool. There's a reason why even like to this day, I mean, even people like Eric Clapton made songs about the crossroads, right?
It's really
so legendary
with the genre as a whole. Like you can't bring up the blues without bringing up the legend of Robert Johnson at the crossroads. I think anyway.
Absolutely. I mean, I love stories that create that lore, like that there's almost a mysticism of blues, I mean, it even the history. I mean, Sean, you touched on a little bit of the slaves. I mean, since we kind of have a little bit of a theme here, that was code, right? They would use that as code,
Oh yeah.
They would sing these songs and it would be like literally code to other people, like it was all like another language. Really, really interesting.
It was in some ways too. It was just a little piece of freedom for them.
Yeah.
Even the slightest little bit, just the chance that they got to, have these chants and hollers and music while they were working. It is that little piece of freedom that they could just hold on to.
Yeah, it like keeps you going, I guess. Keeps you like able to work the next day,
When you mentioned that, it kind of made me think about what the blues really is about. You bare your soul and you sing about the rough and hard times of your life. I mean, they don't call it the blues because it's happy music, but there's a purity to that and an honesty, and it's, as far as music is concerned, I don't think you're going to listen to anything more honest and real than blues music.
Absolutely.
100%. And even kind of way back in the day, in its early years, and it even is today, it's a niche, this genre of music. Back then it was pretty much as a black person's music. That's why I found these juke joints so interesting, is because it was a little bit of an underground thing, right? It was an all black kind of musical getaway.
And just, I mean, it was the influence of rock and roll. I mean, Elvis famously stole from these blues musicians, Led Zeppelin. I mean, so many, they made good money off of these people who made nothing.
Yeah,
they
actually,
really
it's interesting because there's so few records. I mean, there were record companies that were just pure for black musicians, and that's basically how Elvis got his start, was actually through a black record label.
Yeah, exactly. No, and and some of these songs that, if I mention some of these songs, you're gonna think of the white artist, Spoonful. You know, you're going to think of Cream. Well, that's a Howlin' Wolf song. If I say Sweet Home Chicago, you're going to think of the Blues Brothers or whatever. But no, that's Robert Johnson, you know? And it's a shame because I think people should know the original songs more, you know? There's so many. I could name so many, you know? So many songs that are taken and you know, they were originally done by these original artists so many years ago, and the rock and roll artists have taken them and have made such a crazy career out of that, you know? I just gave you 2 examples, but I could give you tons more, you know what I mean?
No, but that's a great point because I even just listened back to, you know, Sweet Home Chicago by Robert Johnson. It was just so bare bones. And I mean that in a great way.
Yeah.
It was just him and a guitar.
I love
That's
how
it.
he talks about going to California. It's like he didn't even know where Chicago was, hey? Like it was so foreign.
It's so far away. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he says in that song he's going to California to Sweet Home Chicago. It's like it just goes to show how small the world was when you didn't have things like the mass communication that we have now, right? Like California was just this mystical land. Chicago was this mystical land. And he was just talking about going back there. Like it's such a cool song.
Well, yeah, because I can probably almost guarantee you that his education was nil.
Likely, yeah. I mean, they were free then, but were they really, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
When you think of all the missed opportunities they could have had if they were just treated as equals, you know, like Robert Johnson, I don't know his background. There's very little known about him, but imagine being him and teaching yourself to play the guitar and trying to sing and trying to, I don't even know if he was really trying to be famous, but to just try and be someone, you know, to get some kind of recognition. It would have been just the most difficult thing in the world, I think, at that time.
Yeah, because there's basically no outlet other than amongst your own people.
Well, I mean, in a way, there's that charm, that sort of historical kind of endearing charm about that. I don't want to, you know, I think that, you know, they deserve their due, but would it be the same if they were kind of big time, you know? The fact that Robert Johnson is it 31 songs, Sean? Something like
I'm
that.
not even 100% sure. It's not a lot.
It's something like 30 songs or something, and you know he's got the tight 30 songs. That's it. 3 photos, and this unbelievably mysterious death. He's very young. Tommy Johnson also, you know, died fairly young. Just this amazing story behind it. I mean, that in its way is the charm of it, you know, the mysteriousness of it that people like Bob Dylan kind of try and copy by trying to be a mysterious kind of guy. And I just keep going back to, you know, I'm not trying to, you know, put white guilt on, you know, these bands because they're talented bands, but how many people know why the Rolling Stones are called Rolling Stones? Well, it's Rolling Stone, a song by Muddy Waters. I mean, these guys were huge fans. They were such huge fans that they named their band after a song by Muddy Waters. And I guarantee you, most people will not know that. And that's my point. I'm not outraged by it, but the education level of people, I would just wish they would listen to these artists. And, you know, thank you, Sean, for bringing this out.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm glad you brought up the idea that 31 songs or whatever it is for Robert Johnson. That's part of the mystery too, is that's just what we know. There could be more out there. But
Well, and who
so
knows how many
mysterious.
songs he just got up on stage and he winged it. And, you know, like nobody recorded back then.
Well,
These
that's
things, like,
That was a huge deal for him to get that record made.
yeah.
Just recently, a photo was released to him. Only like last year or something, a new photo emerged.
yeah, a relative of his found it, just kind of tucked away. I
See,
believe.
that's so cool. Like, and I get your point, Shane, about you know, what if they were given the respect, and, you know, what if he was like an Elvis? But, you know, like Elvis, we know everything about Elvis, and, you know, the guy died on the toilet, you know, like we know too much about Elvis. Robert Johnson is just this perfect enigma. He's so cool. Like,
I
it's
get what you mean. Like, it's done a lot for the genre because of this. Like, it draws you in, the mystery of Robert Johnson, the legend of Robert Johnson. Like, you want to know more.
so much respect to Mississippi. Sorry, I don't think I would ever go there. But I would totally go to the Crossroads, and tell me you guys wouldn't come with me.
Oh God, yeah.
Exactly. We would totally go there just because it's like the history of it. We're not going to go to freaking... Okay, maybe we would go to... What the hell's Elvis's compound?
In Memphis?
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop crapping over Elvis, but you know what I mean. Like, Robert Johnson is just such a cool legend. Blues is such a great genre of music, and I love blues more now that, you know, with my friendship with Sean, you know, and we had great times. We watched the Crossroads movie. That was a really awesome movie. We went to the Blues Fest. Great times, right?
Oh, we saw some unbelievable acts there, man. Unbelievable.
You know, if it wasn't for you two, I probably wouldn't know anything about the blues. Because prior to meeting you guys, I didn't listen to it. But my love for that genre of music came from meeting you guys and having you introduce me to it. And I'm really glad you guys did.
Well, you can
It
thank
really-
Sean, because he got me into it more so. I mean, I was a fan of the blues, but Sean was more of a fan than me. He knew way more than me.
And the funny thing is, one of my favorite blues musicians of all times is actually a white guy. So Stevie Ray Vaughan, of course.
Right. Well, you know, there's some really good white guys, you know, killing it in the blues world. I mean, we saw Joe Bonamassa, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah,
I
you
saw
were
him
there
actually
for that one.
second time in Regina. So
And I've seen Kenny Wayne Shepherd, you know, some
yeah,
really
I believe
good.
I was there that one as well. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. We gotta go. We gotta catch some blues, even if we're going to those juke joints that we used to go.
Oh yeah,
Those
was it Mike's
crowded
Juke Joint?
rooms. Yeah, we saw some doozies there too, for sure.
Oh yeah.
Great times. Yeah, and it's funny. The sad reality was, and one of the great wake up calls was when we would go there. We were literally like 20 years younger than everyone else there.
Yeah.
That's not an exaggeration.
No, it's not. Because how old were we when we started going? Like, what, 24, 25?
Something like that, sure.
Yeah.
Like,
'Cause it was around 10 years ago, and I'm going to be 35 this year.
there was no one our age there.
No.
No.
And all the characters we met there too. Like, come on, like the old hippie dude and Voodoo Mama.
I think Voodoo Mama was the highlight.
Oh,
Really?
the one with the same dance move all the time.
Twisty?
Yes.
Twisty.
Yeah.
Oh. We probably were known as just the young guys who were there. Who were like, if there was any sort of country act, we're leaving. I'm sorry, but come on. We go to Blues Fest for blues.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. Well, this was a great one, guys. Another great pod and another great time.
I enjoyed it.
No, another 3 great tales once again.
And with that, I'm Jason. Thanks for listening.
I'm Shane.
And I am Sean.
We'll catch you guys in the next one.
How you gonna try to be someone when the people can't see you? How you gonna try to open those doors?
Hey guys, do you know we're on the interweb now?
What? Really?
Yeah. Facebook.com/Three Tales Told. You can get everything there. You can message us, links to our website, email, the whole 9 yards, guys.
threetailstold@gmail.com or facebook.com/threetailstold. See ya.